I had to bury it last night.
Well, unbury it.
I'm not a necromancer. I can't do the assignment. I forgot how to use my hands.
Seriously.
Yep, I forgot how to use my hands.
Did everybody find their packet? Harris, you don't want to sit in the desk?
No, it's all right.
Okay, you know your chair is very squeaky, right? Have you tested it out? Okay, so I know I have some students in my geometry classes that are also in Algebra 2, and then if you are in Algebra 2 as well, you've done a lot of factoring this year. What we're doing today is reviewing factoring, but this is considered, in my opinion, baby factoring. And the reason I say that is because all of these are going to have a 1 in front of the x squared, which makes them super easy to do. But if you're not in Algebra 2, then maybe you forgot how to do it, so that's kind of what this is about. So I want to show you one where we factor it and then we solve it. And like I said, as long as the coefficient in front of that x squared is a 1, they're really simple. And I may do it slightly different than a teacher did in the past, but it's going to be basically the same thing. Okay, so one thing we do have to make sure is that it does say equals 0 in order to solve. So as long as it says equals 0 and this side's in order, and what I mean by an order is it starts with the x squared and then the x and then the constant. Okay? All right, so this is how I do it. A lot of teachers call it rooftop, and I like to call it A times C rooftop. Have you guys seen this somewhere in your past? Yep. This is standard form for a quadratic. A is the number in front of the x squared, B is the number in front of the x, and C is the constant. So I like to call this A times C rooftop. That way you know you're taking the A, which is the number in front of the x squared, times the C, which is the constant. So what do you get when you take 1 times negative 3? Negative 3. And I'm just going to do it like this. I'm not even going to mess with the x squared. I'm just multiplying the coefficients. So like I said, I may do this slightly different than you've seen in the past, but it's basically the same. So 1 times negative 3. So I'm looking for numbers that multiply to be negative 3, and I want them to add to be the b. So I want them to add to be the negative 2. So can you think of two numbers that multiply to be negative 3 that also at the same time add to be negative 2?
1 and negative 3.
Okay, so 1 and negative 3. Let's see.
Oh, no.
So is 1 times negative 3 negative 3?
Yep.
Good. And is 1 plus negative 3 negative 2?
Yep.
Those are the winners. And then as long as it's a 1 in front, this is so easy. To get the x squared, x is going to go here and here, and then I just write these numbers down that I came up with. Since that's a positive 1, I put plus 1. If that's a minus 3, I put minus 3, and now it's factored. Now, these aren't so easy when it's something other than a 1 in front, but today that's all we're doing is problems with the 1 in front, so they're super easy. Okay, then I'm just going to bring down my equals 0, and I'm going to solve it. So the way this works, yes, sir?
I don't have a packet.
Okay. The way this works is that is telling you that you got two numbers multiplying together, and those two multiplied together make an answer of 0. Well, the only way things multiply to give you 0 is if one of the things is a 0. So you set either the first factor, x plus 1 equal to 0, or you set the second factor, x minus 3 equal to 0, and then you just solve those two simple equations. What would you get if you solved that equation right there? X equals negative 1, because you would subtract 1 from both sides just to show you all my work for this first one. So there's one answer. And then what would you get if you solved this equation? A positive 3. So just to show my work, I'd move a minus 3 by adding 3, and I would get x equals positive 3. And those are the two answers here. Do you remember factoring in your past?
It's coming back.
Okay, and like I said, there are several different kinds of problems to factor. These are really easy with the 1 in front, and I know me saying A times C rooftop is a little different than what people, some people have said in the past, and maybe haven't done this little thing. Have most of you done this little thing off to the side? No. Okay, so anyway, this is just how I show it, but you know, if you remember something different from the past and it works for you, you can do it that way too. Now, the next problem, I want you to notice that it doesn't say equals 0. And one thing I always suggest is to keep your x squared positive. So since the x squared is positive on the left side, I need to move both of these. And I want to see if we can move them without showing work. How would you move a 2x? So if I subtracted it, it would now be a minus 2x on the left side. And how would you move this 3? You would subtract it, so it would now be a minus 3 on the left, and now there would be nothing left on the right-hand side because I removed both of those. I removed the 2x by subtracting it. I removed the 3 by subtracting it, so there's nothing left there. And then from here, I could factor it. But do you notice it's the same problem?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not going to do it again.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so these are involving our shapes, but we're going to solve them by factoring. So what do you think your equation on this first one would be based on the picture? X squared plus 16 equals 10x. So these tick marks mean that those two sides are congruent, so that's why we set them equal. But I can't do these problems unless they say equal 0, Jake. So they need to say equal 0. Like I said, I want to keep my x squared positive, so I'm going to leave this whole left side alone. How can I move this? Subtract it. So if I subtract it, it's not going to be over here anymore. Now I need this side in order. Can anybody tell me what it would look like in order? Okay. Plus 16. So I'm moving the 10x by subtracting it. That's why it's a minus 10x. This just recopied, this just recopied, but I had to put it in order, meaning you want the x squared, then the x, then the constant. Okay, now I'm going to factor it. So this is a 1 in front, so I'm going to take my a times c. So what's 1 times 16? 16. I'm looking for numbers that multiply to be 16, and they need to add to be the b. So what two numbers multiply to be 16 that add to be negative 10? Negative 8 and negative 2. And I'll tell you right now, this is sometimes the hardest part for people coming up with these numbers right here. Okay, because of the 1 in front, these are the really easy ones. To get the x squared, x goes here and here, and then I just write those two numbers down. So I write the minus 8, I write the minus 2, and then I recopy the equal 0 and I solve. Okay, so the way it works is the only way two things multiply to give you 0 is if one of these things is a 0. So either the first factor, x minus 8 equals 0, or the second factor, x minus 2 equals 0. And then I just solve those two equations. And eventually, you won't need to write those equations. You'll just be able to do it in your head. What do you get when you solve this equation? 8. So x equals 8 is one answer. And what do you get when you solve this equation? 2. Now, I do want to kind of check our work because we're working with shapes that have side lengths, and you can't ever have a negative side length. And so I'm just going to double check that if I plug the 8 in here and the 8 in here, that these two sides actually equal. So let's just check. If I put 8 in this x and square it, what's 8 squared? 64. And then 64 plus 16? 80. And if I plug the 8 into this x, is 8 times 10 also 80? Okay, so the two sides equal when the x is at 8. Let's try the 2. Let's put the 2 in. What's 2 squared? What's 4 plus 16? 20. And if I plug the 2 in this x, is 2 times 10 also 20? Okay, so these are both fine answers. Sometimes they'll both work, sometimes they won't. So we're just going to check them out. Okay, what do you think the equation for the next one would say? Good. X squared equals 16x minus 64. So these tick marks here mean that those two sides are congruent. We're on page 33 of the packet from yesterday. Okay, and then I have to make sure that they say equals 0 or I can't begin. And like I said, I don't want to move my x squared if he's positive where he is. So I'm going to leave him alone. I'm going to move both of these. So how would you move the 16x? Subtract it. How would you move the minus 64? Add it. So if I did both of those things, I'd have a 0 on the right. Can you tell me what this would look like? Yes, x squared minus 16x plus 64. So I moved the 16x by subtracting it. That's why it's negative now. I moved the negative 64 by adding it. That's why it's positive now. And once you move those two things, there's nothing left on the right side but a 0. Okay, so here I go. I'm going to take my a times my c. So what's 1 times 64? 64, and I want them to add to be the negative 16. So I don't want anybody to blurt it out. I just want everybody to think for a second. So you're looking for two numbers that multiply to be 64, and those two numbers will also add to be negative 16. Don't blurt it out. Everybody just think for a second. So they need to multiply to be 64, and they need to add to be negative 16. You think you have them? What are they? Yep, negative 8 and negative 8. Okay, and because of the 1 in front, this is really easy. I just build my two sets of parentheses. X are going to go here and here, and then I just write those two down. So minus 8, minus 8. Now, do you think we can solve this without me showing that next step? If you set x minus 8 equal to 0, what would you get if you solved that? X equals a positive 8. Would I get a positive 8 if I set x minus 8 equal to 0 over here too? Yes. Okay, if you get the same answer twice, you don't have to write it twice. I can just write it the one time. Now, let's just plug it in and see if it works. So if I put 8 into this x right here, what's 8 squared? 64, okay. Now I need to plug 8 into this x and take 16 times 8 and subtract 64. Can somebody do that with their calculator? Take 16 times 8 and subtract 64 and see if it gives you 64. Okay, then we're good.
Good.
Okay, on this next one, what do you think your equation would say?
Same as x squared plus 2x equals 15.
Good. X squared plus 2x equals 15. I'm going to give everybody a moment to try to make it say equals 0 because it doesn't say equals 0 right now, and then I'm going to draw a stick to see if somebody did it successfully. So you need to make sure that this side says equals 0. I'm going to give you a second to do that. Okay, and it goes to Haley. What's it look like once you set it equal to 0?
X squared plus 2x minus 15 equals 0.
X squared plus 2x minus 15 equals 0. Did everybody get that? Okay, so here we go. We're going to take a times c. What's a times c give you?
15.
And what kind of 15? A negative 15 this time. So do pay attention to signs. So what's 1 times negative 15, which is negative 15. And I want them to add to be the b. I want them to add to be 2. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to be negative 15, and those two numbers will also add to be 2. Don't blurt it out. Okay. So 5 and negative 3.
You're welcome, everybody.
Does everybody agree? Okay, so I build my two sets of parentheses. Since of the 1 in front, x goes here and here, and then I just recopy these two numbers. That's a positive 5, so I write plus 5. That's a minus 3, so I write minus 3. And then I'm just going to set both of those factors equal to 0 and solve them. So if you set x plus 5 equal to 0 and solve that equation, what would you get? Negative 5. Okay, there's one answer. And what would you get if you set x minus 3 equal to 0 and solve? A positive 3. Okay, now let's just check them. So I'm going to plug negative 5 into this x. So it's okay to get negative answers, but you can't have negative side lengths. So that's what I'm checking for. I'm going to plug negative 5 in this x. What's negative 5 squared? 25, because it's negative 5 times negative 5, so 25. And then plus 2 times negative 5. What's 2 times negative 5? Negative 10. So it's 25 plus a negative 10, 15? And that's what we wanted it to be because that side's 15. Okay, let's try the 3. What's 3 squared? 9. And what's 2 times 3? And is 9 plus 6, 15? So both of these answers work. Okay, so I changed my mind about a problem that I was going to have you guys do for homework. I want to do it now because it's a little different. So let's turn the page and let's go to this picture of this trapezoid. So this is page 34. What'd you say? You need me to go back?
No.
Okay. Yeah, it means it's number 4. Okay, so number 4, what would your equation say?
X squared minus 24 equals 2x.
Okay, x squared minus 24 equals 2x. But I can't solve these problems unless they say equals 0. I'm going to draw a stick and see if somebody can tell me what it would say. Riley, can you tell me what it would say if I made it say equals 0?
X squared minus 2x minus 24 equals 0.
Good. X squared minus 2x minus 24 equals 0. And notice that Riley put it in order. He has the x squared, then the x, then the constant. And he moved that 2x by doing the opposite, which is subtract it. That's why it's a minus over here. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to take my a times my c. What's a times c this time? Negative 24. What do I want them to add to be? Negative 2. Okay, I don't want anybody blurting it out because some people take longer to figure this out than others. You're looking for two numbers that multiply to be negative 24 and also add to be negative 2. So take a moment and see if you can find them. How's it different? Because of the answers.
Oh, yeah. Only one of them.
Right. Is Kim here today? Oh, she's not. Oh, you are here. Kim, did you find your numbers? Okay, negative 12 and 10. Let me write them down for just a second. Now, these two numbers have to multiply to be this. So these two numbers do not multiply to be this, so we don't want them. So you're looking for two numbers that can multiply to be negative 24, and then those two numbers will also add to be negative 2. I'm going to try somebody else. Ray, how about you?
I'm not sure.
Can you think of anything that multiplies to be 24?
Negative 6 and 4.
Okay, let me try it. Negative 6 and 4. So do those multiply to be negative 24? And do those add to be negative 2? That's what we want. Okay, tell me, what am I going to put in my parentheses? Anybody? And there we go. So x minus 6 and x plus 4. And then I just set both of my factors equal to 0 and I solve. So if I set x minus 6 equal to 0, what would I get if I solved that? I'd get a positive 6. And if I set x plus 4 equal to 0, I would get? Okay, so let's just check them. I'm going to put my 6 in. And so if I put 6 into this x, what's 2 times 6? 12. Okay, so I need this to be 12 also. So I'm going to put 6 in here. What's 6 squared? 36. And is 36 minus 24 12? Okay, so 6 is good. Let's try the negative 4. If I put negative 4 in this x right here, what's 2 times negative 4? Negative 8. Can't happen. I can't have a side with a negative length, so I'm not even going to put him over here because when I put the negative 4 in this x, that makes a negative 8 for a side, and you can't have a negative side length. So I'm going to cross him out, and this is my only answer this time. That's why I wanted to do this one. So sometimes they both work, sometimes they don't. So I just wanted you to try it for yourself. Okay, so right now, it's not exactly an assignment. It's kind of like yesterday. I want you to do number 1 instead of the 4. So number 1, and then 5, and then 7, and then 8. So I'm giving you 4 to do right now, and then I'm going to go over them here in about, I don't know, 12, 13 minutes, something like that. So I'm going to come around and assist you if you need assistance. But I want you to do 1, 5, 7, and 8. And then we're going to go over them just a little bit. So try 1, 5, 7, and 8.
You Alexis go outside. She doesn't want you to. She's got a happy mouth today.